Higgins here. I hope you're having a great Tuesday. I'm back to do our final read aloud from our real life ghost stories. This one is about La Llorona. Introduction. Beware the weeping woman. It's late at night and you're roasting marshmallows with your family at a campsite beside a river. The flames crackle. Moonlight glints off the rushing water. Suddenly, you hear a woman cry out for her lost children, but you don't see anyone. As you explore the riverbank, a woman in white drifts towards you. Her feet don't touch the ground. You scream, and she vanishes. Were your eyes playing tricks on you? Or did you just encounter La Llorona, the weeping woman of Mexico? Fact, La Llorona means weeping woman in Spanish, and to weep just means to be crying or sobbing. The story of La Llorona began sweeping through Mexico in the 1500s. According to the tale, a local woman drowned her children. Filled with regret and overtaken by heartache, the woman searched for her children up and down the river. She didn't stop her search even to eat or drink, and she died. Her spirit was doomed to roam the earth forever, calling out for her lost children. La Llorona's story is still told today. Many people say the weeping woman is not a legend at all, but a real ghost. Skeptics say that sightings of La Llorona can be explained by mist or lights. They believe there is no ghostly woman in white. Turn the page and decide for yourself. Chapter 1. The Legend of La Llorona. The legend of La Llorona has terrified listeners for hundreds of years. There is no single story of La Llorona. The most common version involves a beautiful peasant woman. When her husband dies, the woman must raise her children alone. She meets a wealthy man and falls in love, but the man doesn't want to help raise her children. He won't marry her. Desperate to be with the man she loves, the woman takes her children to the river and drowns them. But after killing them, she dies from a broken heart. Fact. The story of La Llorona is sometimes told to keep children from misbehaving. Parents warn their children that if they're not careful, La Llorona will get them. The woman's story doesn't end with her death. Her spirit roams rivers and other bodies of water as she searches for her dead children. Dressed all in white, she cries out for them. Any children who are careless near water are snatched away by La Llorona's tormented ghost. Skeptics note, no child abductions have ever been tied to La Llorona or a ghost. If they happened as frequently as reported, there would be evidence. Tales from Mexico. Other versions of La Llorona's legend have spread throughout Mexico. In one story, a poor woman is left by the man she loves. She becomes depressed. While her sons sleep, she kills them. Then she takes her own life. Her ghost wanders the city streets at night, crying out, "My sons!" In another version, a mother drowns her children in a canal. No one knows why she kills her children. Her ghost wears all white and roams the city streets at night. She cries out for her dead children before disappearing into the darkness. La Llorona is also said to haunt Mexico's highlands. At dusk, she appears to men returning from work in the fields. She calls to them in the voices of their wives or girlfriends. La Llorona leads the men to the edges of cliffs. Any man who follows her ghostly cries is pushed off the cliff to his death. Fact. In folklore, a siren was a beautiful creature. She was half bird, half human. Sirens used their voices to lure sailors to their death. I'm going to try to pronounce this word, but it probably won't be right. Teotihuacatl. Some scholars say La Llorona is based on the Aztec goddess Teotihuacatl. The Aztecs lived in present-day Mexico long before the Spanish arrived. According to legend, the name I can't say, stole infants and killed them. Dressed in white, she drifted along the streets after she killed them, waiting. Her cries warned of wars and misery. La Llorona haunts the United States. Mexican immigrants brought the tale of La Llorona with them to the southwestern United States. Like in Mexico, there are many U.S. versions of her story. Some say her children can be seen wandering the streets at night. Other tales say that La Llorona isn't a ghost at all. She's alive and bloodthirsty. In another twist on the legend, La Llorona doesn't kill her children. On a cold night, she decides to leave her husband. She hides her children under a bridge on the shore of a river. Then she goes home to pack their belongings. But when she returns, the children have frozen to death. She haunts the river, weeping for her children. Fact: in New Mexico, La Llorona's soul is sometimes associated with flames or balls of fire. Folk tales and urban legends. Folk tales have been told for thousands of years. They are stories of legends passed from person to person. Urban legends are modern versions of folk tales shared by word of mouth and online. Urban legends can be strange or scary, or both. They often deal with real-life fears such as drowning or talking to strangers. Urban legends sometimes contain a lesson by telling us what not to do. Chapter 2. Encounters with La Llorona. Is La Llorona a legend or a real ghost? Some people claim to have come face to face with the weeping woman. These real-life encounters will send chills up your spine. But are they enough to convince you she's more than just a scary story? Walking on water. In 1931, a girl named Guadalupe visited the Santa Fe River in New Mexico with her two brothers. The boys spent the summer afternoon splashing in the cool water. Guadalupe played on the riverbank. Suddenly, a gust of wind tore through the river valley. It rattled the weeds and cattails where Guadalupe played. Then, she heard the sound of tinkling bells. Guadalupe tried to move, but she found herself paralyzed. "I could not move a muscle," she later recalled. "I was mesmerized by the sound of the bells for at least a minute." Once the sound of the bells died away, Guadalupe heard a woman crying, "Mija, mija, my daughter, my daughter." Finally, able to move, Guadalupe and her brothers ran all the way home. Guadalupe's brothers also heard the woman calling out, but they heard her crying for her sons, not her daughter. Guadalupe and her brothers recounted their tale to their parents. Guadalupe's mother whispered to her father, "La Llorona." The family quickly returned to the river to see if they could find her. The woman could still be heard wailing. Guadalupe's mother shouted, "Leave my children alone, daughter of the devil!" As the family turned to leave, one of Guadalupe's brothers yelled for them to stop. He pointed to the river. A ghostly figure walked on the water, her arms outstretched. The family fled in terror. Frozen with fear. Between 2000 and 2009, a young boy was visiting family in Durango, Mexico. He played outside with his cousins late at night. Suddenly, the boy found himself separated from his family. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up straight. The boy could feel something or someone watching him. When the boy heard the laughter of unfamiliar children, he became paralyzed with fear. Soon the laughter died out and a woman began to wail. She begged for her children to return to her. Fearing it was La Llorona, the boy was finally able to move. He ran into his grandmother's house. Everyone inside the house had also heard the woman's cries. Was it La Llorona, or was there another explanation? The Ghost Without Eyes. Two brothers in Texas got the fright of a lifetime near the city of Penitas in the mid-2010s. They were driving home in separate cars on Military Road around midnight. This barren road runs along the Rio Grande River. As darkness settled, the brothers noticed a woman walking along the side of the road. She wore a long white dress and no shoes, and she was soaking wet. Concerned for her safety, the brother in the front car slowed down to ask her if she needed a ride home. The pale woman suddenly turned toward the car. Her face was unlike any he had ever seen. She had gaping black holes where her eyes should be. The man sped away in his car. When he glanced in the rearview mirror, she was gone. His brother in the rear car also could not see her once he passed. What's your name? Around this same time in Santa Maria, Texas, a young girl rode her bike to her cousin's house late at night. What is up with all these kids being out late at night? Crazy people. Her cousin lived near a cemetery close to the Rio Grande River. Of course they did. Just as she parked her bike in the driveway, a woman in white appeared. She hovered above the ground. Then, the woman floated toward the girl, who was frozen in shock. Finally, the woman asked, "Who are you?" The girl managed to answer with a fake name before running into the house. When she looked back, the mysterious woman had vanished. Had the girl spoken to La Llorona? The Ghostly Hitchhiker. A winter's drive home turned into a nightmare for one man from Pecos, New York. He was driving home late one night in 1953. His car's headlights lit up a woman standing alone on the side of the road. She wore a long black coat that covered most of her face. The man pulled over and opened the passenger door. "Would you like a ride home?" he asked. The woman climbed into the car without answering. That should have been his first sign. As the man drove, the woman sat still as a statue. She kept one hand on her knee and the other inside her cloak. The man still couldn't make out her face. He tried to ask her questions, but she refused to utter a single word. Soon, the man began to smell sulfur. Nervous, he pulled the car over and asked her to get out. But when he turned toward his silent passenger, she was gone. The woman had never opened the door to get out. Before the man could drive away, a blood-curdling scream pierced the car's interior. The hairs on his neck stood straight up. The man later told his friend what he had experienced. His friend had a shocking story of his own. He had also encountered the mysterious woman. "That was La Llerona," said the man's friend. Even though the ghostly hitchhiker wore all black, the men believed the woman could be none other than La Llerona. Chapter 3, Ladies in White Around the World. La Llerona isn't the only ghostly woman in white. White lady ghost stories have been told around the world for hundreds of years. People use these stories to help them deal with and understand death. The banshee is a female spirit from Irish folklore. According to legend, banshees can be heard wailing at night. In Ireland, they are considered messengers of death. If a person hears a banshee's cry, someone in their family is doomed to die. That kind of rhymed. Like La Llerona, banshees are often said to wear all white. They are typically described as old women with long white hair. They have red-rimmed eyes from crying so much. Haunted France. Ghostly women in white are also said to haunt France. Some haunt bridges, ravines, roads, and creeks. Travelers who want to pass must show respect to the ghost. According to some legends, the ghost extends her hand, asking for a dance. She lets travelers pass if they dance with her, but if the traveler refuses, the lady in white flings them into a ditch filled with thorns. Some ladies in white have familiars, or animals, under their control. If a traveler doesn't show respect, the ghost commands her familiars to attack them. White Lady at the Lake. In Rochester, New York, a ghostly figure dressed in white haunts Durand Estate Eastman Park. According to legend, a mother and daughter lived in the area in the early 1800s. One night, the daughter went for a walk on the beach of Lake Ontario. She never returned. Her mother searched the beach and surrounding woods for the rest of her life. Even after the mother died, her spirit never gave up her search. On misty nights, a ghostly woman in white has been spotted floating over the waves. Germany's Lady in White. One of the earliest known Lady in White stories came from Germany in the mid-1400s. German white lady ghosts are called Die Weiße Frau. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. And it means the white lady in German. Some scholars believe this story was carried to Mexico by Spanish explorers. It may have inspired the tale of La Llorona. According to the German story, a rich man died. He left behind a widow and 2 children. His widow hoped to remarry and soon drew the attention of a wealthy man. But the man said he would not marry her because 4 eyes were in the way. The widow assumed he meant the 4 eyes of her children. While her children slept one night, she crept into their bedroom and killed them. When the man found out the widow had murdered her children, he rejected her. The 4 eyes he had been referring to were those of her parents. They did not approve of the widow. His parents, not hers. They did not approve of the widow. The widow later opened a convent and became a nun. After her death, she haunted the convent. Her ghostly apparition signaled death to anyone unlucky enough to see her. Chapter 4, Was La Llorona a real person? The tale of La Llorona has been told for hundreds of years in Mexico and the southwestern United States. Her story warns children to be safe around water. It also teaches parents to look after their children. But could La Llorona have been a real woman? Some believe La Llorona may be the ghost of a native Mexican woman named La Malinche. In the early 1500s, Spanish explorer Hernán Cortés sailed to Mexico. He wanted to take the island from the Aztecs. Cortés took La Malinche as a slave. La Malinche spoke both Spanish and the Aztec language of Nahuatl. I don't know how to say that. She helped Cortez speak with Aztec leaders. She also had a son with him. Cortez took the Aztecs' land by force in 1521, ending the Aztec Empire. Some stories say that La Malinche felt guilty for helping Cortez. They say she spent her remaining days weeping over her betrayal of the Aztecs. Her weeping has been connected to the tale of La Llorona. The Weeping Woman of Mexico. Tales of ghostly women in white aren't limited to Mexico and the southwestern United States. Different versions of these tales have been told around the world in many different cultures. Though the stories differ, they may share common threads. These ghosts often wear white, but not always. They cry out to warn others of death and danger. People often tell these stories as a way to make sense of an uncertain world. Most writers and scholars agree that La Llorona is an urban legend. Her story is used as a cautionary tale. Like most urban legends, it has many variations or differences. In some, La Llorona weeps for her children she killed. In others, she is a beautiful woman who lures men to their deaths. No matter the story, the name La Llorona instills fear into everyone who hears it. So listen carefully the next time the sun goes down. You just might hear the Weeping Woman of Mexico. Okay, and then there's a really creepy picture over here that I'm going to show you. And on the picture it says, according to legend, after killing her children, Medea later married Agus. She eventually attempted to poison his son Theseus. And it says that the story of Medea from Greek mythology has a lot of similarities to the tale of La Llorona. Medea was a witch who was able to predict the future. She used her powers to help her husband, Jason, steal a sacred object from her father. Jason later left Medea for another woman. Like La Llorona, Medea killed her children, but she showed no remorse for their deaths. And here is a photo of Medea. Yikes. And I do believe that is it. Yep, that's it. So we have finished our real life ghost stories book. Yay! And we'll be moving on to our next read aloud tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Happy Tuesday. See ya.